All right, so in the first two videos, we discussed the biology and the breakdown and the natural solutions for low testosterone. And again, if you're just finding this video now, I'd really encourage you to go back and watch those videos first. But now it's time to talk about the integration, because this isn't just about numbers on a lab test, it's about how you actually feel, your energy, your sex drive, your fire, that part of you that wants to do hard things and lives for the challenge. So in this final section, we're going to connect the dots between testosterone, sex, aging, and modern toxins, and show you how to protect and preserve your testosterone for the long haul without a prescription. Let's go. So let's talk about sex and testosterone, the feedback loop. So you've probably heard that testosterone increases libido, and that's true. But what's just as important and way less talked about is the reverse. Sex, arousal, and even thinking about intimacy can increase testosterone. Let me give you a few examples. So there was one study, and what they found is that men who watched erotic videos saw their testosterone rise by over 80 nanograms per deciliter within minutes. There was another experiment, and what they found is that men who were participating in sex had a 72% increase in salivary testosterone. The point? Sexual activity, or even anticipation, triggers your brain to fire up the HPG axis and produce more testosterone. It's the original positive feedback loop. More T leading to more libido, leading to more sex, leading to even higher testosterone. But here's where it matters in real life. When your testosterone is low, your libido goes quiet. You stop initiating, your connection suffers, and you feel flat. Then you have less sex and your T dips even lower. This is how guys end up in that low T spiral, emotionally, physically, relationally. The fix? You don't wait for libido to magically appear. You create the conditions that allow it to resurface. Taking care of your body. You reduce stress. You sleep. And you engage with your partner or explore healthy intimacy. Because the act of pursuing sex can bring your testosterone and your desire for life back online. And by the way, this applies to women too. So women produce a fraction of the testosterone that men do, but they also experience small T surges with arousal and orgasm. And that's tied to mood and motivation, even assertiveness. Low T in women is a real thing, and it often goes undiagnosed. And many of the same lifestyle levers apply. Now, what about testosterone and aging? So it is true that testosterone declines with age, but just how fast and how far really depends on your lifestyle. So the average man loses about 1% of total testosterone per year beginning in his 30s. But that's not destiny. So in studies of men who stayed lean and strong and metabolically healthy, T levels declined much more slowly. And in fact, some men in their 60s and 70s were able to maintain levels close to their younger baseline. Now, in terms of what accelerates the crash, we have things like weight gain and sleep loss, chronic inflammation, alcohol overuse, estrogen exposure, and isolation and depression. And in terms of what slows it, you've got things like strength training, healthy body fat, so basically somewhere between 10 and 20%, regular intimacy, micronutrient sufficiency, DHEA and vitamin D optimization, and avoiding environmental toxins. And this is something we're going to touch on later. So here's another thing that most people don't realize. As we age, our SHBG increases, meaning more of your testosterone is locked up. So even if your total T is fine, your free testosterone, the stuff that actually works, might be too low. And this is why older men often feel the symptoms before the labs show the numbers. And it's also why men in that gray zone, so basically testosterone of somewhere between, call it 300 and 450 nanograms per deciliter, often feel like crap. You don't need to have hypogonadism to feel the effects of low testosterone. But the good news, every lifestyle strategy we've talked about can slow the decline or even potentially reverse it. And when testosterone rises naturally, you're not just stronger, you're more you. You want to solve problems. You want to initiate. You want to build. Not because it's easy, but because it's wired in you to want to do hard things. That's testosterone, that's vitality, and it's trainable. Now let's talk about something that people love to ignore because it's inconvenient. Environmental endocrine disruptors are silently lowering testosterone, and the data is crystal clear. Let's break down the big offenders. So the first we have is BPA, or bisphenol A. It's found in plastics and canned foods and even receipts. It mimics estrogen, so it binds to the receptors and it confuses your hormonal system. It's associated with lower testosterone as well as sperm quality. In fact, in one study, they found that high BPA exposure in teens was linked to a 50% lower testosterone than their peers. So how do we reduce it? First, stop microwaving plastic. Next, use glass or stainless containers where possible. And lastly, you want to try to go BPA free when it comes to cans and bottles, as well as exposure to receipts. Next up, we have phthalates. So these are found in fragrances and vinyl and personal care products. They suppress testosterone by interfering with testicular function. And there's data that shows that phthalates are linked to a significantly lower free and total testosterone, especially in men over 40. So what do? First, use fragrance-free grooming products where possible. Additionally, you want to avoid PVC packaging. And lastly, make sure you ditch air fresheners as well as chemical sprays. And lastly, alcohol. Chronic alcohol intake leads to increased aromatase. It destroys your Leydig cells, suppresses both your LH as well as your gonadotropin-releasing hormone, and raises SHBG. Translation, less testosterone, more estrogen, lower libido, lower muscle. Moderate alcohol, fine. But if you're drinking daily and wondering why your sex drive and recovery suck, you already know the answer. And let me hit one final point because this may be the realest part of the whole discussion. So when your testosterone is low, you don't just feel tired, you feel flat, like your edge is gone, like the world has lost a bit of color. You might still show up for work, you still do the dishes, you still go through the motions, but what you lost is that spark, that desire to go harder. And what's scary is that many men normalize this. They think this is just what getting older feels like. But here's the truth. When testosterone rises, whether naturally or otherwise, what returns is not just libido or strength or energy. What returns is drive, the desire to do difficult things, the willingness to take on resistance. And that's what makes life meaningful. That's what you want to want again. And that's why this matters, not just for performance, but for who you are as a man. Now let's tie this all together. If you want to reclaim your testosterone naturally, this is your battle plan. First, you want to lift weights, so compound movements 3 to 4 times per week. Additionally, deep sleep, at least 8 hours in a dark, cold room. You want to lose fat, especially around your waist. You also want to make sure you're doing things like eating healthy fats, enough carbs, as well as real protein. Supplement strategically: ashwagandha, tongkat ali, DHEA, boron, and vitamin D. Have sex regularly, or at least engage sexually. De-stress daily: meditation, nature, cold, breathwork. Avoid toxins, especially BPA, phthalates, as well as excess alcohol. And lastly, test your labs, especially SHBG, free T, DHEA, as well as LH. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be consistent. And the win here isn't just a higher number on a lab sheet. It's energy. It's confidence. It's the quiet but powerful voice that says, I'm ready to take this on. That's testosterone. That's what we're after. And the best part, you don't need a clinic. You don't need a patch. You don't need permission. You just need the blueprint. And now you've got it. I hope you found this content and format valuable. I decided to do something a little bit different with this video rather than do, one long video. I tried to break it up into chunks. I know for myself, it's hard sometimes to sit down and watch a 3-hour video on some subject or even a 30-minute video. And so I thought maybe by breaking it up into smaller chunks, it'll be a little bit more digestible. So I hope I provided value there and you learned something. If you did, you could do me a huge favor by hitting that like button as well as subscribing to the channel or sharing with someone else who you think could find value. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks.